I learned the exact weight of a lie the morning I opened my grandson's last letter. Grief had made my house echo. Silence stretching from the kitchen to the front door, where his boots still waited like faithful dogs. When Mr. Patterson said $2.8 million, the world tilted, then steadied under the press of Michael's handwriting. Take care of yourself. Mama Dot. I thought the worst had passed. It hadn't. I hadn't even reached the bottom of the staircase when the first knock of greed rattled my life, wearing my daughter's perfume. My name is Dorothy Williams. For 25 years, I raised Michael the way you raise a garden every season, every storm, every quiet day of growth others don't bother to witness. He arrived at 5 years old with a stuffed dinosaur and eyes that scanned the horizon for a mother already driving west. I was 50 then, still working nights at the hospital, counting dollars in coffee tins, praying the car would hold through winter. We built a rhythm that became a life Sunday dinners, piano lessons we could afford only because I picked up extra shifts, and a ritual of small kindnesses that stitched us together. He called me Mama Dot before he understood what had been taken from him. Later, he kept the name because love is not a place you move out of. 3 months after his sudden death, 30 years old, a body too young to betray itself, I sat in Mr. Patterson's office in my best black dress, clutching the leather handbag Michael gave me for my 67th birthday. The lawyer's voice was gentle as he read the will, the Riverside house, the business assets, investment accounts, a life insurance policy, all left to me. He slid over an envelope in Michael's careful script. He thanked me for saving him and asked me to do something good with what he'd earned. I cried, not for the money, but for the boy who still insisted on picking up the check even from the far side of life. The phone rang while the ink of my tears was still drying. My daughter's name glowed on the screen like a bruise. Karen had not called during the hospital vigil or the funeral. The last time I'd heard from her was a postcard that said Merry Christmas and nothing else. Now her voice was clipped and purposeful. She wanted the will, the numbers, the documents. She said she had rights as Michael's mother. I listened to the audacity, the way some people say mother like a claim staked on a map they abandoned decades ago. I told her to contact Mr. Patterson. I told her to think very carefully about what she was choosing. When I hung up, the quiet around me changed shape. It stopped being grief and started being anger, clean and righteous as cold water. 2 days later, the doorbell rang while I was pressing a memorial rose into the earth. Through the peephole, Karen looked like a well-kept memory, expensive highlights, designer purse, a living argument for the comfort she had chased. She sat on my old sofa and tried on reason like a new coat. He was young, she said. He couldn't have meant to exclude his biological family. If he had really thought it through, she argued, he would have chosen differently. I asked when she'd last spoken to him. She dodged. I asked if she knew he hated thunderstorms until 12, that he volunteered at the animal shelter every Saturday morning for 5 years, that he could play Chopin but quit recitals because the crowds made him blush. She called those things details. I called them a life. The certified letter arrived with an official thud. Karen was contesting the will on grounds of biology and supposed undue influence. The words made my hands shake, not from fear, but from the insult. Had I influenced Michael? Yes, toward kindness and work, toward holding doors and finishing what he started. I phoned Mr. Patterson. He was steady in a way good lawyers and good trees are steady. We would gather records, school forms listing me as guardian, medical files with my name in the box labeled emergency, receipts and tuition checks, and all the small paper proofs of showing up. He warned me that absence makes a pretty story in court when recited as sacrifice. He said we needed evidence loud enough to drown it out. I began in Michael's old room, where the air still seemed to remember his laugh. Photo albums told the true narrative the county fair, when he was 8, and brave enough to ride the Ferris wheel if I held his hand. The high school graduation where he scanned the crowd until he found me. The first apartment he furnished with a desk, we sanded ourselves. On one page, the background caught our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. No relation to the attorney who had watched our street for 40 years with the unsentimental attention of a hawk. She remembered everything. Over tea, she produced a diary that made time obedient. In neat lines, she had recorded Karen's sporadic visits, her impatience, her swift exits, and the way Michael cried after the car disappeared. She remembered the last argument, too. With the accuracy of someone who keeps the truth like a seed in her pocket, Karen declaring it would be better to stay away. Me saying, if she left again, she shouldn't expect him to be standing on the porch when she returned. Karen, meanwhile, was busy in the only way she knew how. She visited Michael's former office, introduced herself as his mother, and asked pointed questions designed to reframe love as manipulation. David, his business partner, called to warn me. He said he had told her the truth that Michael called me his hero and meant it. In the evenings, after sorting records, I sat at the kitchen table and remembered the thinness of those early years. How every spare dollar went to cleats and sheet music and later to textbooks. If Karen's lawyers wanted my bank statements, they could have them. They would see a ledger of sacrifice that added up to a man. In quiet moments, fear tried to argue its case. Biology is persuasive to strangers. Stories are trick mirrors under fluorescent courthouse lights. But then I would return to the evidence: Love Leaves' Sunday voicemails saved on an old phone. A scarf he bought me one winter because he noticed I tugged at the thin one. The letter with his unshakable thanks. I pressed the pages flat, smoothed them with my palm, and understood the most important fact: Karen had underestimated the permanence of what she walked away from. She thought memory could be cross-examined into doubt. She forgot that some truths are not performances, but weather present, undeniable, shaping everything they touch. The courthouse smelled of old paper and old battles. Like every heartbreak that had ever been pressed into legal language still lingered in the walls. I wore the navy suit Michael had helped me choose for his college graduation. A suit meant for proud photographs now repurposed for war. Karen's lawyer painted me as a manipulative woman who had stolen a child's love for personal gain. His voice dramatic, as if he were auditioning for pity. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, thinking of the long nights at the hospital and the way Michael's face lit up when I met him at the school gates. If that was manipulation, then let the word stand. Patterson rose without theatrics. He spoke with the calm of a man who trusted truth to carry its own weight. He laid out Michael's school records, every form listing me as guardian, every emergency contact line with my name, every report card signed in my hand. He presented medical records, graduation programs, photographs. He spread out bank statements and receipts that showed where my paychecks had gone: piano lessons, baseball gear, tutoring, college tuition. He spoke of constancy, of showing up, of the kind of love that doesn't need embellishment. And then he called Mrs. Patterson, 81 and sharp-eyed, who walked to the witness stand like a woman tired of watching lies go unchallenged. Her testimony was devastating in its plainness. She described the way Michael waited at the window for Karen, how his face collapsed when she left early, how he cried into my apron afterward. She remembered overhearing Karen say it would be better to stay away, that she was tired of pretending. She remembered me smoothing the boy's hair, telling him his mother loved him even when I doubted it myself. When the judge asked if I had ever discouraged contact, Mrs. Patterson's voice cut through the air like a clean blade. Dorothy bent over backwards to keep hope alive. She made excuses. She wrote letters with him. She encouraged him to call. If anything, she protected Karen from the truth of her own neglect. Karen flinched. Her lawyer scribbled frantic notes. The next day brought more testimony, each voice weaving a tapestry of Michael's life. His business partner described a man who credited his grandmother with every success, who called me his hero. His college roommate remembered Sunday calls that always ended with "Love you, Mama Dot." His pastor spoke of Michael's generosity, his volunteer work, his steady character. Not one witness offered a single thread of resentment toward me. Still, Karen's team pressed forward with clinical theories. They brought a psychologist who spoke of abandonment trauma, of children idealizing one caregiver while rejecting another. She had never met Michael, but her words floated in the air like poison disguised as science. Patterson's cross-examination cut swiftly. She had never spoken to Michael, never observed him, knew nothing of his donations to family charities or his mentorship of troubled teens. He asked if such actions reflected a man consumed by resentment. She faltered. The courtroom could feel the ground shift. Then Karen took the stand, dressed in black, hair pulled back. She looked every bit the grieving mother. Tears welled on cue as she spoke of being 19 and overwhelmed, of choosing to leave Michael with me for his own good. She described me as creating a world where she felt like an intruder, her son polite but distant. She claimed she stepped back to preserve his stability, painting abandonment as sacrifice. When asked if she had ever stopped loving Michael, she whispered never and dabbed at her eyes. The jury leaned forward, softened. She was rewriting history into a story of maternal love deferred, and for a moment, I felt the walls closing in. But Patterson was ready. He brought out phone records, 3 calls in 16 years. He produced 12 Christmas cards, unsigned except for her name, devoid of questions or love. He quoted the neighbor's testimony about overhearing Karen tell her husband she was done playing mother to someone else's child. Piece by piece, the fabric of her performance unraveled. Then her lawyer asked the question I hadn't seen coming. Did you contribute financially to Michael's care? Karen straightened, voice firm. Yes, $500 a month for 10 years, $60,000 total. She pulled a manila envelope from her purse, filled with copies of money orders. My stomach dropped. It was a lie, but the kind dressed in paperwork. The judge allowed the documents into evidence. During recess, Patterson and I examined them on a hallway table. At first glance, they looked legitimate dates spanning a decade, my name printed on each. But then I saw the address was wrong. A simple transposition of numbers, enough to guarantee every letter would be returned. She had created a record of sending money, knowing it would never reach me. 25 years of planning a lie to serve her future claim. It was brilliant in its cruelty. Patterson called Mrs. Patterson again, who remembered her nephew delivering mail on our route. He had tried to deliver to that non-existent address, returning stacks of undeliverable envelopes. His testimony, when admitted, was clear and confident. Not once in 20 years had money from Karen reached my door. Karen's face drained of color. But Patterson was not finished. He had found something in Michael's belongings, a small recorder Michael used for business. On it was a conversation with his estate attorney 6 months before his death. Michael's voice filled the courtroom, steady and resolute. He said everything should go to Mama Dot, that Karen had reached out for money but never been part of his life, that she had lied about sending support. He had saved letters, emails, texts, evidence of her true nature. He said plainly that she made her choice when she walked away, and that I had made mine when I stayed. The silence after his words was absolute. No theory, no tears. No forged document could erase the sound of his conviction. The judge ruled quickly. The will stood, ironclad and clear. Karen's fraudulent evidence would be referred for possible charges. The estate would pass to me, exactly as Michael intended. As the gavel struck, a peace I had not known since his death settled over me. My daughter left without a glance, her schemes crumbling around her. 3 months later, I used part of Michael's gift to establish a foundation for children in foster care, a legacy of love instead of bitterness. At the opening ceremony, as children laughed and filled the air with possibility, I thought of Michael. His final act of care had become the beginning of something greater. I smiled, knowing sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but living well and letting love speak louder than lies. I wish I could tell you that after the judge's ruling, the storm passed quietly, that Karen accepted defeat and retreated into her comfortable Denver life. But people who feed on entitlement rarely know how to starve themselves. She lingered at the edges, filing appeals that fizzled, whispering about conspiracy to anyone who would listen. Yet the tide had turned irrevocably. The court had spoken. Michael's voice had risen from the grave to defend his truth, and the paper trail of her deceit lay in tatters. What remained was the reckoning that comes when the world no longer bends to your narrative. For me, those first days after victory were not celebration, but exhaustion. I would wake before dawn, the way I had on hospital shifts, and sit at the kitchen table staring at the faint ring his coffee mug once left on the wood. I kept replaying the recording, not the legal part, but the timbre of his voice, steady and sure. I thought of the boy at 5 clutching his dinosaur, of the teenager who called from campus every Sunday at 7:10 p.m., of the man who insisted on paying for dinner. That voice was the thread tying it all together, a line that stretched from childhood fears to adult strength. Hearing him affirm me with such clarity was both wound and balm. Neighbors stopped me on the street, pressing my hands, telling me they had always known the truth. Michael's former colleagues sent flowers. His college roommate mailed a photograph of the two of them at graduation with a note that read simply, "He loved you fiercely." Each gesture reminded me that love leaves evidence beyond courtrooms, that memory is a chorus when truth needs witnesses. And yet, beneath the gratitude, a bitter seed sprouted. Why had Karen thought she could erase 25 years with forged money orders and crocodile tears? The answer, I realized, was as old as greed itself. Money blinds some people to the obvious. They mistake biology for bond, inheritance for redemption. Patterson, ever steady, advised me not to dwell on her antics. She may try to claw back with another suit, but the evidence is overwhelming, he said. You've won. Dorothy, not just legally, morally. Still, the thought of Karen's lies festered. I remembered the day she left Michael with me. She had been 19, her suitcases already in the car. Her voice hard when she said Brad didn't want kids. She kissed him quickly, promised visits that never came, then drove away as his small hand pressed against the window. That moment replayed in my mind during every court session, every accusation. It was the truth she could never scrub away, no matter how carefully she dressed her testimony. 3 months after the trial, I stood at a podium under a banner that read, "The Michael Williams Foundation for Children in Foster Care." I had taken part of the inheritance and turned it into scholarships, mentorship programs, and support for children whose lives echoed Michael's beginnings. I wanted them to know what he had known, that being abandoned once does not mean you are unloved forever. The mayor shook my hand. Reporters asked questions, but all I saw were the children in the front row, their faces bright with a hope no courtroom could quantify. I thought of Michael's letter, the line where he asked me to do something amazing with his gift. I whispered, "I'm trying, sweetheart." Karen did not attend the ceremony. Though I heard whispers she was furious I had wasted money on strangers. To me, it was the truest use of his legacy. Revenge would have been small, a personal triumph. This was larger, a seed planted in soil he had tended with every act of generosity. In the quiet afterward, when the speeches were over and the chairs stacked, I stood alone under the banner and let myself cry. Not from grief, though that never fully leaves, but from the strange alchemy of turning pain into purpose. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine Michael walking through the front door again. He'd laugh at the fuss, tell me I looked sharp in my navy suit, tease me for crying too much. Then he'd pull me into one of those hugs that pressed the world back into shape. I know he's gone, but I also know his story did not end in a courtroom. It continues in every scholarship awarded, every child who feels seen, every stranger who learns that love is measured not by words, but by presence. Karen will fade, her lies forgotten. What remains is the evidence Michael left behind: his voice, his choices, and the life we built together. When people ask what lesson I carry from this ordeal, I tell them it is simple. Blood may write your beginning, but love writes your life. Biology can abandon you, commitment will not, and in the end, when the battles are done and the records examined, it is not the claims of the absent that endure, it is the steady hand that never let go. Michael's inheritance was money. Yes, but his true legacy was proof that love leaves evidence strong enough to outlast any lie. That is what I will carry until my last day. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love is stronger than greed. That truth eventually finds its voice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts or your own story. Your voice matters here.